Sex education is considered taboo in many cultures and societies. Even in the United States, there's a lot of controversy on teaching adolescents sexual and reproductive health. In a lot of schools, there is poorly comprehensive and abstinence-only education. This kind of education teaches adolescents that they should refrain from any type of sexual activity until marriage. Abstinence-only programs first received their United States government funding under the Reagan administration program called the Adolescent Family Life Act. Over the years, the federal government has given millions of dollars to states that support abstinence-only education. A study in 2011 found that under the federal funding regulations, most of these programs cannot include information about contraceptive or safer sex practices. 30 states have abstinence-only education in their schools. There has been found to be a positive correlation with high teen pregnancies and STD rates that have abstinence-only programs in schools. Teenage pregnancy rates are affected by factors such as socioeconomic background, culture, and education. In families where the household income was lower than the average, the rates of pregnancy teens were higher. Hispanic and African Americans in lower economic classes were much more higher risk than Caucasian teens. Religion affects school policies on sexual education and reproductive health, like the aforementioned abstinence education that comes from mostly religious reasons. It has been found that higher teen birth rates in poorer states were also correlated with a higher degree of religiosity. Young girls who are part of a lower socioeconomic class and a minority are more likely to become pregnant and have a higher chance of acquiring STDs. Pregnant teens who give birth are less likely to finish high school and go on to college, found a study in 2011, and showed that teen mothers are more likely to drop out of school. 51% of teen mothers earn their high school diploma by the age of 22, compared to the 89% of women who are not given birth as teens. Most teenage mothers are not capable of raising a child on their own and don't have an education to have a high-earning employment. This creates a disenfranchised environment for the children of the teenage mothers. It creates a cycle of poverty for these families and communities. A child of a teenage mother is more likely to become a teenage parent themselves. Children in poverty are more prevalent in families that are of an ethnic minority. A study by Lindsay Duncan in 2009 found that poor black children have a much higher likelihood of living on welfare, being placed in juvenile detention facility, or in foster care than attending a top state university. The United States consistently has higher rates in teenage pregnancy and STDs than other developed countries. In Europe, sexual and reproductive education is influenced by WHO guidelines and is separated from religious values. The cultural difference when it comes to sexuality are very apparent when it comes to reproductive education in schools. The difference that in Europe, a study found in 2011, there is a greater and easier access to sexual health information and services for all people, including teens in Europe, which is facilitated by social openness and comfort in dealing with sexuality. The positive effects of this is that Europe consistently has lower teen pregnancy rates, lower STD rates, and lower HIV rates in the world. In developed countries, it is more common to have basic women menstruation education. It is sometimes not so common in underdeveloped countries. Studies by Hennigan in 2016 found that across low and middle income countries have reported that more than 50% of girls have inadequate menstrual health management, with higher proportions reported in rural areas. A lot of young women in underdeveloped countries do not have access to clean facilities or sanitary pads and other forms of menstruation products. Due to lack of education on the subject and cultural reasons, a lot of girls suffer from feelings of shame, fear, anxiety, and distraction have been described. The most significant problem encountered by young women is the unavailability of sanitary products. School and work attendance for women drops significantly in the times of their menstruation. 3/4 of girls surveyed reported soiling outer garments during their last menstrual cycle, and found that school attendance improved by 9% after 5 months with the provision of disposable sanitary pads. Young girls in low to middle income countries have high rates of teenage pregnancy, STDs, HIV, and unsafe abortions. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, the birth rate per 1,000 girls aged 15 to 19 years old is 143 compared to the worldwide average of 65. Lack of education and resources make it harder for adolescents to use contraceptives, condoms, and other safe sexual practices. Cultural and religious reasons are one of the biggest barriers in comprehensive sexual education and the reproductive health needs of adolescents. Young girls are denied contraceptives frequently due to religious or moral reasons from the providers. Beliefs that deem sexual activity in young girls immoral. A study in 2015 in Kenya and Zambia found that 55 to 67% of providers agree that a schoolgirl who is sexually active should not be allowed to use contraceptives. Another study in China found that 40% of the providers did not approve of contraceptives being available to young people, and nearly three-quarters felt that these types of services should not be provided to high school-aged individuals. Lack of education is common in developing countries. Due to economic reasons, many teenagers and children have to leave school. In some countries, young girls have arranged marriages to secure a financial future. One study in Indonesia in 2011 found that involving female school students in Jakarta aged 11 to 17 years, less than half of the participants knew that a one-time sexual intercourse could lead to pregnancy. Widespread misinformation about reproduction increases the chances of teen pregnancy. The World Bank has shown that for every year a young woman remains in school after the age of 11, the risk of unplanned pregnancy decreases by 7%. For women with at least a primary education and 6% for women with a secondary degree. In rural areas, education is even harder to come by than in major cities. Unfortunately, the continent of Africa has the highest HIV rates in adolescents in the world. Up to 6,000 young people are estimated to be infected with HIV each day, the vast majority of whom live in sub-Saharan Africa. Approximately 75% of those becoming infected are female. By a study by Sommer in 2015. Poor and educated women in Africa are more susceptible to being infected due to social inequalities like having a higher chance of being sexually assaulted. In developing countries, there exists a cult of domesticity where gender roles are strictly defined. A study in 2010 by Shoshana wrote, poor women are less likely to be knowledgeable about HIV, AIDS, and are also more likely than comparatively affluent women to have engaged in risky sexual practices with a recent sexual partner. Social constructs such as viewing pregnancy as immoral and wrong diminishes the chance for a young girl to continue to go to school. Laws making abortion illegal also affect the higher chance for these young girls to seek unsafe abortions, thus increasing our chances of dying. Education policies that include sanctions against young people found to be in possession of condoms while in school in many lower to middle income countries also hinder safer sex behaviors. Punishment in many countries may include beatings or suspension from school, found a study in 2013. These policies make it harder for adolescents to practice safer sex. In conclusion, it has been shown with many studies that sexual and reproductive education is very important for the positive futures of adolescents. With abstinence-only education, that has been shown to have negative impacts on populations in the United States. Direct and honest sexual education has been shown to have a more positive outcome. In developing countries, this is the hardest to achieve due to a lack of resources and widespread misinformation. That is why developing countries have higher rates of teen pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, HIV, and unsafe abortions. Social forces are also very important factors to consider in sexual and reproductive health among adolescents. It influences policies, laws, and cultures on the subject. In developing countries, gender equality is one of the main factors of poor sexual and reproductive health in women. In general, more direct and comprehensive and honest, without judgment, sexual and reproductive education is a positive influence on adolescents' lives and futures.